When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
Hey Fruities, Wendy here, and we are finally back from the longest break we've ever taken. We missed you guys so gosh darn much. I'm speaking a little quietly. As y'all know, some stuff happened when he had to move, and my studio seems to change every week. Today, I'm just front room studios, which is not very soundproofed, so please forgive me in advance for the sound. We just want to say that we hope you've enjoyed what has been in your feed so far during our break. Thank you for being patient with us while we took our break to rest and recharge and make some changes and improvements, and hopefully y'all will stick around for those. The episode dropping on today's drop is one we recorded back in December of 2018, and it was back then our 23rd episode, and we were so proud for that milestone at that point and what it meant for us. So it was really exciting. It's really exciting to still be here. It was also exciting that this was an episode that was suggested by one of our Fruities, or one of our day ones, Marcus. So thank you, Marcus. We love you to the moon and back, and thank you for suggesting this episode way back when. Fruities, y'all know, listening, you can keep them coming. If you have any case suggestions, you know where to find us. But this particular case was extremely horrific. It was a case in which the perpetrator, Jessie Dotson Jr., murdered 6 of his family members after an argument in Memphis, Tennessee, and the murders occurred in March of 1994, and his victims were his relatives and included some really young children. Again, this was horrific, and so we just want to say rest in power to the victims. We want to send healing energy, love, and light to those still affected by this tragedy. There were survivors of the violence, and we want to have reverence for the fact that, this is true crime, and it's a true crime that was true for many people. And what the survivors and loved ones experienced in this fateful case have gone through and continue to go through. So just healing energy. Let's say rest in paradise to the victims. Haley Cox, Cecil Dotson, who was 30, Marissa Williams, 27, Hollis Seals, 23, Shindri Roberson, 23, and 2 of the perpetrator's nephews were Samario Dotson, was 4 years old, and Cecil Dotson, the second, was 2 years old. Hopefully you'll notice that Fruitloops Serial Killers of Color has changed over time. This episode started in 2018. There are some things that we used to do or say that were, this is the 2018 version of us, and we may have said or done some things in this episode that we would never do today. So, for example, this is a tiny one. Beth no longer says patrons. I have no idea why I never corrected her when she would say that, but anyway, she doesn't say it anymore. All that to say, thanks in advance for giving us grace. We're all learning and growing all the time, and as always, if you've got thoughts or comments to that effect, then get at us. Thank you to everyone who has been rocking with us as we continue to uplift these stories and learn and grow along the way. We're still out here doing the thing, and we couldn't have done it without y'all. So thanks, and enjoy the show. everybody, and welcome to Fruitloops Season 2, Episode 7. Thank you so much for listening. Fruitloops is a podcast about true crimes committed by people of color and their victims that we don't hear or know much about. Now, contrary to popular belief, not all serial killers are white. There are many well-documented cases of serial killers of color, and Fruitloops is a podcast all about them. We will take deep dives into the fascinating lives and crimes of serial killers and true crimes committed by people of color and their victims that the media and entertainment commonly leave out because the news is racist. Allegedly.
And we are Wendy and Beth. She's Wendy. I'm Beth. We're not journalists, investigators, or psychologists. Just a couple of gals interested in true crime.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the opinions expressed in this podcast are just that, our opinions. Please send any questions or comments to fruitloopspod@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 602-935-6294. And we may feature your voicemail on one of our future episodes.
That's right. Can't wait to hear from you. So, who are we talking about today, Beth?
Today we're talking about Jessie Dotson Jr. and the Leicester Street murders. This case was suggested to us by Marcus in our Facebook group.
Thank you, Marcus. This case is wild. So we were riveted doing the research and are looking forward to talking to you guys about it. So how you doing?
I'm doing good. I was really busy this weekend doing lots of stuff, getting ready. You know, holidays are coming, getting ready. My daughter's going to be here for Christmas with my grandson.
Woo!
So, yeah, super excited.
Awesome.
You know, holiday stuff.
Yeah.
How about you?
Same. Everything's decorated. We have 3 Christmas trees.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I only got the one.
Yeah. My kids wanted their own in their rooms, and I thought that was such a neat idea. And then we decorated the shit out of the big tree that we have in the living room. I never in my life have I been more proud of a tree that I've trimmed. It looks so good.
Well, you should take pictures for sure.
I know, and maybe post them. Part of it is the lights came on the tree already.
That's cool. Yeah,
with lights, so it looks so good. So
sweet.
We're in the spirit. So now we're gonna get into our mailbag. We've got some listener letters.
Sounds like they're flying down from the sky. Little angels. Thank you so much, angels.
Post office angels.
Yeah. So Ashley on Facebook sent me a message and she said, this podcast is so excellent. I came across it after catching up on another true crime podcast on Spotify, and I've been hooked from episode 1.
Hey.
I am so glad that someone is paying attention to not only the killers, but the victims, and giving us a fantastic podcast to listen to at the same time. So thank you, Ashley.
Thanks, Ashley. We got a lovely iTunes review from Miss Richard, and she gave us 5 stars, I believe.
Ooh,
so
nice.
Thank you so much. But here's what she had to say. I read the other reviews, and I get what their problems are with the podcast, but that's what I love about it. They are just 2 chicks talking about crimes and enjoying themselves. I hate the dry podcasts that just spew out a story but don't sound like they're enjoying doing it. Almost robotic, and not to mention the ads. I like that I caught this podcast at its early stages. These women are telling stories and making it entertaining. So thank you so much, Ms. Rashad.
Yeah, thank you.
I also wanted to add, you know, we know our show is not for everybody, and that is okay. But to those of you who are rocking with us and listening to us regularly and following us and watching us grow and supporting us, we are so grateful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we are amazed that people are listening. We really only expected my mom to listen.
And maybe my sister.
But we're like approaching 15,000 downloads at this point. So
wow,
we're so just over.
Yeah, just happy. Yeah.
So anyway, keep sharing, stories with us. We love sharing our stories with you guys, giving you tips on how to keep from getting murdered. And we're just always trying to improve the show. So
Yeah.
stay rocking with us and stay engaged. So thanks again, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to mention to our patrons that I made a mistake when mailing out the buttons, and I didn't calculate the postage correctly. So those went out again. They had to go out again this week. And because of the delay, we added in some stickers and maybe something else too. And these are the first batch. So, and obviously I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But now we got it figured out. So there should not be any more delays going forward. Yes. And I sincerely apologize. Also, if you are a patron, please check your email address listed on your patron profile and look for an email from us, and or add your shipping address to your profile if you can, so we can send out merch.
Yes, I just adjusted our Patreon page, because here's another thing. We never thought anybody would sponsor the show. So I did the Patreon page like, I don't know, 6 months ago, and I forgot all about it. And then it was like, whoa, there's people here. So I adjusted the settings so that before somebody checks out, they have to provide their mailing address. So
okay, cool.
We should be getting them pretty easy. We did get a new patron like in the last 24 hours. Denisa, you're the girl I never had, and I want to get to know you better. That wasn't necessary, but I just wanted to do it. Denisa posted on our Patreon page. She said, I'm just posting here to say I love the podcast and wanted to support a podcast by people of color as a fellow person of color. Love listening to two true crime nerds, amen, being able to support the show. Keep up the great work, and love that y'all are repping New York, right? No, we're not. But Beth has some New York ties.
Yes, I did live in New York for a while, so kind of, sorta.
But that's cool that she thought we were repping New York. That means we have accents and sound really cool. She goes on to say, still listening through the older episodes, though I keep up with the new ones because I'm weird and cannot ignore the new notification from your podcast on my app.
Hey, Denise, I'm weird too, so.
Me too.
You're in good company.
You are in very good company. So thanks for creating a great podcast, and look forward to seeing it grow. Thanks so much. My dad used to say to me when I was a teenager and in college, Wendy, you are the most ridiculous Black person in the world. Thanks, Dad. So, yes, you are in very good company. So we haven't had this race discussion in a long time. I think we did in our first couple of episodes, maybe another time during season 1, but I don't know if we've gotten into it season 2. And I don't think we need to bring this up all the time because it's woven. The theme is woven throughout each one of our episodes and the cases we talk about. But I wanted to say before we get into this episode, we would like to remind everybody, this is a podcast about true crime and people of color. True crime is difficult to talk about and hear about sometimes, and race is the same way. But both are just part of the world that we live in, and we want this to be a safe space where we can have discussions about true crime and race and learn. We're all learning all the time and trying to be our best sexy selves. Amen. I got a message, and we've gotten a few messages like this, but recently, so it came to my mind, listeners asking how they can be better white people. And I think, first, I love this question. And I think that there are a couple ways. If you are capable of speaking up for a person of color or somebody in a marginalized group in the LGBTQ community, or giving an opportunity to a marginalized person, like hiring them or in a meeting asking them what they think. Also, I recommend consuming as much content to inform yourself about people that are different than you. On previous episodes, I've recommended 13th, the documentary on Netflix, It's fucking amazing. Maybe read some Toni Morrison. There is a book written by a sociologist called Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong. The book is, even it was written in the 90s, still very relevant today. White Fragility, the book. Our podcast, Yo, Is This Racist? Is a podcast. There's a book called So You Want to Talk About Race. The Wilderness podcast gets really into American history and the parties and how race, it seems to be discussed in all 13 episodes. There's so much content out there that if you happen to be somebody who doesn't know anybody different than you, either race-wise or sexual identity or economic background, go to the internet. Start there. And then get to know people who are different than you, ask questions and listen. And so those are my recommendations. Beth, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that's pretty comprehensive and really great suggestions. I do have to say that I've actually learned a lot by doing this podcast.
Same.
And I'm really grateful to be able to do this show, especially with you.
Oh my God. Same, girl, same.
And we welcome our listeners to be a part of the conversation on Facebook or Twitter at Fruitloops Pod, or email us at fruitloopspod@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we also get good messages on Instagram, so you can always slide into our DMs on Instagram too. So let's take a quick break and get into the story when we come back.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
So, who's our subject today?
Today we're talking about Jessie Dotson Jr. and the Leicester Street murders in Memphis, Tennessee. He killed 6 members of his family, 4 adults and 2 children, and also attempted to murder 2 of his nephews and 1 niece, all in one night. So he's not technically a serial killer, but occasionally we will cover mass murderers or maybe other crimes.
Right, right.
And this is one of those.
This is a story that I was only able to find. There wasn't that much info about him, and I don't know if there's been any podcasts about him. Otherwise, I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, I have not been able to find a podcast about him.
Yeah, so thank goodness for Fruit Loops. Amen. So let's get into some stats. Okay, Jessie Dotson Jr. was a mass murderer who killed his brother and his brother's family after an argument. He had 7 victims. Jessie murdered someone in 1994, and later, after a release from prison, he murdered more people on March 2nd, 2008. He was arrested on March 8th. His victims speak their names because they're important. Hallie Cox, Cecil Dotson was 30. Marissa Williams was 27. She was the mother of 4 of his kids. Hollis Seals was age 33. Shindiri Robertson was 22. His 2 nephews, Samario Dotson was 4, and Cecil Dotson II was 2. His MO was shooting the adults and beating/stabbing the children. The crimes occurred in Memphis 10. That's Memphis, Tennessee, but that's just how I heard it rephrased in rap songs. Anyway, he was sentenced to 18 years in prison on November 21st in 1994 for that first murder of Hallie Cox. He was released on parole on August 27th, 2007. And after he murdered his family, he was sentenced to 6 death sentences on October 12th, 2010. All right. So much talking. So sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the guy's early life.
All right. So Jessie Dotson Jr. was born on December 19th, 1974 in Memphis, Tennessee. His family referred to him as Junior, and we will also refer to him as Junior so that we don't confuse him with his father, Jessie Dotson Sr., who is also a part of the story. The family lived in Binghamton, which is a neighborhood on an edge of Midtown in Memphis, Tennessee. And I'm not absolutely certain on the pronunciation of that, but it looks like Binghamton to me.
It does to me too. Plus, you got a lot of degrees and read really well, so I'm sure that's it. So at times, Junior had a very hostile relationship with his family. As a teenager, he regularly fought with neighbors and siblings. In 1990, at age 15, Junior was charged with disorderly conduct for making threats against his mother as she tried to discipline him. A month later, he was charged with assault after a 13-year-old boy told his parents that Junior had punched him in the face and threatened to put him in the hospital if he didn't bring him $25 the next day.
What a shit.
Yes. Not nice.
No.
Not nice.
1 year later, in the fall of 1991, police arrested Junior for disorderly conduct after his mother told police he came home and wanted to fight his brother. After placing her son in the bedroom and locking the door, Dotson broke the door open and punched several large holes in the wall, the arrest report stated. Dotson then placed his finger in his mother's face, telling her he was going to kill her. When officers arrived, Dotson was loud and angry, refusing to calm down and still wanting to fight his brother.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I think it would be really hard to call the police on your own kid. You know what I mean? Like, so it must have been pretty bad. Police charged Junior again in 1992 with disorderly conduct following an incident in which Junior cussed at a neighbor during an argument and then threw 2 beer bottles into her apartment. And on December 13th, 1991, 6 days before his 17th birthday, police pulled over a car that Junior was riding in. On the floorboards, an officer saw a 20-gauge sawed-off shotgun. Whoa.
Yikes.
Sawed-off shotgun and a .38 caliber pistol. Oh my goodness. Now we're going to get into the timeline.
On January 8th, 1994, a little more than 2 years later, after purchasing drugs from Junior, a man by the name of Hallie Cox discovered that he had, in fact, bought shavings of soap. Yeah, the two argued, and during the conflict, Junior killed the man.
Okay, so you cheated me and I get killed?
Yep.
So on May 5th, 1994, Junior was arrested. Wow, so it took a while for them to catch up to him, I guess. Junior was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He was 19 years old.
November 21st, 1994, he pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, second-degree murder. He received an 18-year sentence and spent nearly 14 years in state prison. According to his family, he was never the same after that.
On August 27th, 2007, Junior was released on parole and moved in with his sister, Nicole Dotson, in her apartment at Goodwill Village in Memphtown. It's Memphis, but again, in the rap songs, they got me.
Do they really?
They got me all
They say,
fucked up, yeah.
they say Memphtown?
Yes. 3 6 Mafia. Aren't they your favorite rap group?
Oh, yeah, right.
That's what I thought.
You do realize I'm 53 years old, right?
Yeah. I get all that. Ooh, 53. They say that I think I just read that women in their mid 50s or 54, mid 50s, that's when they hit their prime.
Ooh.
Get ready, Beth. So I digress. According to Nicole, Jr. felt like no one in his family was there for him, and he held a grudge against their family because he believed they should have visited him more while he was in jail, and he expressed those feelings to her every day.
Junior began working with their father, Jessie Dotson Jr., as a painter, and he renewed his relationship with his brother Cecil, who worked as a maintenance man at an apartment building and rented a home on Leicester Street in Binghamton. But Junior's relationship with his brother was still full of conflict.
On January 29th, 2008, Junior, Cecil, and several other men were playing cards at Cecil's home. I imagine they were playing spades. It's a black game. After the card game, Junior stood up, put on Cecil's leather jacket, and began to walk out of the house. As Cecil tried to stop him, Junior drew a semi-automatic pistol and challenged his brother to take the coat back from him. I dare you.
Yikes. Cecil then followed his brother in his car to the Goodwill Village Apartments in North Memphis, but eventually lost him. Although Cecil reported to police that his brother robbed and threatened him, Junior was not charged with the crime.
I wonder why that happened.
Yeah, I don't know.
In March 2008, 30-year-old Cecil's 6 children ranging in age from 12 years old to 2 months old, and Marissa Williams, Cecil's 27-year-old fiance and mother of 4 of his children, as we mentioned earlier, were living at the home on Leicester Street. They had been living in the home for 5 or 6 months.
On Saturday, March 1st, 2008, Jessie Sr., Jessie Jr., and William Waddell, also known as Fat, went to Cecil's Leicester Street home to watch a televised University of Memphis basketball game. Marissa Williams and 5 of the children were also home during this time, but Cecil's 6th child, 12-year-old Sierra Dotson, was spending the weekend at her mother's home.
Oh, boy. They were unable to watch the game because Cecil's television could not receive the broadcast. Jessie Sr. left Cecil's house around 6 or 6:30 p.m., and as he was leaving, he saw Cecil on the porch cleaning his grill and preparing to barbecue. He did not see Cecil or Jessie Jr. again that night, and never again saw Cecil alive. William Waddell, a.k.a. Fat, left Cecil's home at 10:30 or 11 p.m., and when he left, Cecil was still alive. Oh my God, so I'm just like picturing it. So the babies were asleep. I thought everybody was awake.
I think some of them were awake. Some of them were sleeping and some of them were awake.
Okay.
Probably the oldest one was still awake.
Mm-hmm.
So on Sunday, March 2nd, 2008, the next morning, Jessie Sr. stopped at Nicole's apartment to pick Junior up for work. He was not there, and Nicole did not know where he was. Jessie Sr. asked Nicole to tell Junior to contact him if he wanted to keep his job. Later that evening, Junior called Jessie Sr. and explained that he had not called because his girlfriend, Sheila Jones, had hidden his cell phone after they'd argued.
Okay. Junior did not explain why he had missed work. When Junior and Fat went to dinner that evening, he went to dinner after killing his family. That evening, Junior asked Fat if he wanted to pick up Cecil. Fat had called Cecil numerous times on March 2nd, but had not reached him, so they did not go by the Leicester Street house.
Little Sierra Dotson had also been trying to call her father, Cecil, on March 2nd. It was her 13th birthday, and she was supposed to do something with him, but they could not get in touch with him.
That's horrible.
I know.
On Monday, March 3rd, 2008, Junior rode to work with Jessie Sr. around 8 a.m., still acting totally normal, but they stopped diabolical. They stopped working at 11 a.m. due to rain. Later that same day, Junior called Jessie Sr., telling him that Nicole wanted him to drive by Cecil's house because the mother of Cecil's 2-year-old son, Cecil II, feared something was wrong.
Erica Smith had been unable to reach Cecil by telephone since the very early morning hours of Sunday, March 2nd, 2008, and no one had answered the door at the Leicester Street home when she knocked around 3 p.m. I believe she is the mother of Cecil II.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she knocked around 3 p.m. that day. She said that the door was partially open and the radio was playing, but she did not see anyone or hear the children, although she could see the television just inside the door and the photographs on the wall across from the door.
Okay. On the morning of March 3rd, Miss Smith discovered that Cecil had not shown up for work and that his relatives had not heard from him. She still could not reach him by telephone. When she called Fat at work numerous times expressing her concerns, he told her to call the police. She took his advice and called the police in the early evening and waited outside the Leicester Street home for them to arrive.
She must have known there was something wrong. Otherwise, she probably would have gone inside, I would think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Officer Randall Davis arrived first. As he walked in the front door, he could smell the dead bodies. The storm door was closed, but the interior door was partially open, and he could see a person's foot lying on the floor inside. Entering the front door, Officer Davis discovered 4 adult bodies, later identified as Cecil, Marissa Williams, Hollis Seals, and Shindri Roberson. All appeared to have sustained multiple gunshot wounds. Officer Davis did not check for vital signs because it was obvious to him that they were deceased.
Officer Davis, along with 2 other officers, continued throughout the house, searching for the survivors and the perpetrators, while another officer secured the front door. Officer Davis noticed blood throughout the house, but none of it appeared to be fresh. Officer Davis saw someone in the hallway bathroom and discovered 9-year-old CJ, Cecil Jr., in the bathtub with a knife stuck in his head. Officer Davis first believed that CJ was deceased, but then noticed the child's eye twitch. After alerting others that he had found a survivor, Officer Davis continued clearing the home.
In a bedroom on the left side of the hallway, Officer Davis discovered 4-year-old Samario, who was deceased. In another bedroom, Officer Davis discovered 2-year-old Cecil II and 5-year-old Cedric, both of whom appeared deceased to Officer Davis. Meanwhile, another officer located 2-month-old Sanaya, who was still alive, and carried her out of the house. The officers exited just as Memphis Fire Department personnel arrived, and Officer Davis let them know a survivor had been found in the bathroom.
As firefighter Jason Vosberg approached the house, he could smell the blood in the air. He later described it as a thick, spoiled smell like it had been there a while. Firefighter and EMT Daniel Moore was instructed to check the adult victims for signs of life, but he did not actually touch them because it was obvious to him that they were deceased. He described the blood as definitely cold. Police believe the bodies had been in the home for approximately 40 hours.
When Mr. Vosberg and a paramedic entered the first bedroom, they discovered that although Cecil II was deceased, Cedric was still alive, so they carried him outside to an ambulance. During this time, Mr. Vosberg was informed that another deceased victim was in the other bedroom. When he returned inside, Mr. Vosberg and Mr. Moore were summoned to the bathroom, where firefighter Herbert Henley was attending to CJ.
There were cuts on CJ's face and a blade sticking out of the top of his head. It's been often referred to as a sawzall blade?
Sawzall blade.
What is that?
It's just a blade that goes into a reciprocating saw. So I think that the reason why they thought it was a sawzall blade was because it was just a blade. It had no handle.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because there were broken knives found throughout the house.
Yeah, like all the handles were broken off the knives for some reason. Yeah. And the doctor who removed the blade said it was a steak knife, or it was a blade from a steak knife. But I think because it was just a blade, that at first they thought it was a sawzall blade.
Okay. Take it away, Beth.
Mr. Moore later described the bathroom as a mess with blood everywhere. According to Mr. Moore, when he and Mr. Vosberg entered the bloody bathroom, CJ, quote, turned his head, and the next thing we saw was one of the most horrible things I've ever seen. It was a knife stuck, embedded in his skull, and it was just stuck there. And it absolutely is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. it's horrifying to think about. And there's pictures of like the X-rays online. It's just crazy this little boy survived.
Yeah, poor little guy.
I can't remember if I mentioned this later in the episode or not, but on the trial, it came out that the little boy said, Uncle Junior, I love you. Like, don't do this to me. And he did it anyway.
Yeah.
So that's horrifying. In addition to the embedded knife, Mr. Moore observed puncture wounds on CJ's abdomen and multiple superficial cuts to his neck. He also had multiple defensive wounds on his hands. They removed CJ from the bathtub and transported him via ambulance to the hospital.
The dead were Cecil Dotson and his fiancée, Marissa Renee Williams, Hollis Seals and his girlfriend, Shindri Roberson, Samario Dotson, age 4, and Cecil Dotson II, age 2. The children who were still alive and taken to the hospital were Cecil Dotson Jr., or CJ, age 9, Cedric Dotson, age 5, and Sanaya Dotson, age 2 months.
Jesus Christ. Well, now we're done with the timeline. Let's get into the investigation. I learned a lot about this case from the First 48. So there's this episode of the First 48 is on YouTube, and there's videos of the trial and stuff. But I wanted to give props to the First 48 because most of these cop shows don't do a fair job investigating and documenting these cases. They use coded racist ass language to describe the perpetrators and victims like thug, prostitute, lowlife, etc. Some police departments they follow on the First 48 are better than others. The Oklahoma guys, they're fucking trash. But the Memphis, Miami, and New Orleans homicide detective cases do a really good job. And I think it's because they have people of color, including Black women, on these police forces. And they're just more knowledgeable and sympathetic to the circumstances surrounding the crimes. Victims and victims' families are definitely treated with more compassion and understanding at the good cities that I mentioned. And I can't say the same for the mostly white homicide departments that I've seen on other police departments or homicide cases on other crime shows. So I just had to say that.
Yeah. So Sergeant Anthony, also known as Tony Mullins of the Homicide Bureau, described the Leicester Street crime scene as horrific and the worst he had ever worked. All of the adult victims had sustained multiple gunshot wounds, and all except Mr. Seals had been shot at least once in the leg. 2 guns were used in the shooting, a 9mm and a .380 caliber, although neither gun was ever found.
But officers located spent bullets and shell casings in the living room, and when officers moved a jacket on the love seat, they found a sealed Ziploc bag that contained additional 9mm and .380 spent shell casings. Sergeant Mullins believed that the person or persons responsible for the crimes had collected the spent shell casings after the shootings, intending to remove them from the scene, but they did not.
Sergeant Mullins believed that all of the adult victims' bodies were moved or staged after the shooting. Cecil's body was located in a kneeling position in front of the sofa with a bag of marijuana in his left hand. Cecil had sustained several gunshot wounds, including several to the front of his body, one to his neck, one to the bottom of his foot, and several to his lower legs. Fibers collected from Cecil's chin and mouth were consistent with a pillow having been placed over his face when he was shot, and police found a pillow in the living room through which a bullet had passed.
Man. Sergeant Mullins believed that Cecil was likely facing his attacker when the first shot was fired because Cecil had several gunshot wounds to the front of his body, which he would not have sustained had he been kneeling with his torso resting on the sofa at the time of the shooting. Sergeant Mullins also believed that the bag of marijuana had been placed in Cecil's hand because Cecil would have dropped it had he been holding it, being shot multiple times or attempting to flee or defend himself.
Yeah. Shindri Roberson's body was in a seated position on the floor with her back to the sofa, her legs extended, and her head to the side. Her shirt was pulled up, exposing her breasts, and her pants were pulled down, exposing her lower body from her waist to her knees. A clear plastic bag containing crack cocaine was found on the outer portion of her vagina.
So, this is just wild.
It's
So he's
weird,
planting drugs. Usually the cops, Dave Chappelle has this like joke that he's made in the past about how cops will get to a scene where there's black people and just sprinkle some crack on them so they can arrest them. But usually that's something the cops do, not that you're supposed to do to your family. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm like, why did he do all this? I'm
so elaborate, like it's so extra.
Yeah, it's weird.
Mm-hmm. Moving along, Sergeant Mullins concluded that Ms. Robertson's body also had been staged after the shooting and that she had been pulled from the sofa to the floor near the time of or after her death, and her clothing then altered. Little blood was found on the floor beneath her body, but a nearby sofa cushion was stained with very thick coagulated blood. Sergeant Mullins described it as consistent with the type of blood loss that would occur from a gunshot wound like the one Miss Robertson sustained to her leg.
Ms. Robertson's pants were also saturated with blood, and bullet holes in her pants corresponded with the location of the gunshot wounds to her legs, indicating that the pants were covering her legs when she was shot and then were pulled down afterwards. The bag of crack cocaine also appeared to be part of the staging, as it was only slightly touching her and appeared to have been placed on her body.
Sergeant Mullins believed that Marissa Williams' body, too, had been positioned after the shooting. Ms. Williams' body was located on the floor, slumped over onto Ms. Robertson, with her legs positioned across Ms. Robertson's legs. He pointed out, however, that the carpet was bloodstained on the side opposite of the way she was leaning. Additionally, Ms. Williams' legs were lying across Ms. Robertson's legs, indicating that Ms. Williams' body had been staged after Ms. Robertson's body had been positioned on the floor. So he just kept going.
Yep.
Staging.
Yep, yeah. Sergeant Mullins testified that Hollis Seals's body was located across from the front door and near the door connecting the kitchen to the living room. His pants were pulled down to below his knees. A cup and a wallet were found near his body, as was a purse with the contents inside, which was later identified as belonging to Ms. Williams.
Although Sergeant Mullins believed that Mr. Seals was shot in the area where he was found, he believed that Mr. Seals' clothing and body were altered after the shooting. Based on the bloodstains, the distance between them, and the location of Mr. Seals' legs, one atop the other, Sergeant Mullins believed that Mr. Seals' body may have originally been lying in one area and then was rolled from that area when his pants were pulled down and his wallet was removed. Man, this guy is doing the most.
Yeah, what the hell? Sergeant Mullins surmised that a perpetrator in the living room could have trapped the children by standing in the doorway of the living room. Although doors leading to the outside of the home were located in the laundry room and the master bedroom, to reach those doors from the hall bathroom or from bedrooms 1 and 2, the children would have been required to walk through the living room. In addition, the door to the laundry room was secured by a tied cord and appeared as if it had not been used in a while. Most of the windows in the home had bars.
The children had been beaten with boards and stabbed with knives. Did you hear that? The children were beaten with boards and stabbed with knives. All of these injuries were inflicted with wooden boards and kitchen knives the perpetrator had found in the home. Officers found blood-stained and broken pieces of wood in various places, including the hallway, the bathroom, and the bedrooms, and in total, officers found 5 knife blades throughout the home, including the blade that was lodged in CJ's head.
Yeah, and like we said, for some reason, he removed the handles from the knife blades. Not sure why.
Fingerprints?
Yeah, but then he just left them there.
Yeah. Then I was also thinking maybe the knife broke?
Yeah, but all 5 of them?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just weird.
There's a lot of strange things in this case.
There is. On March 4th, 2008, Jr. was interviewed by the police. He was not under arrest and at the time was only considered a possible witness.
Mm-hmm.
And he floated the idea to the cops that this was a gang hit by the Gangster Disciples, which is a gang that he said that Cecil was a member of, and that he was in some trouble with them. And so thinking back on the crime scene and the staging, I'm like wondering, if was he trying to stage it to look like a gang hit?
That's the impression I was under.
But I don't know how that made it look like a gang hit.
I mean, the level of violence, the fact that there was drugs found at the scene,
maybe.
And on the episode of the First 48, somebody was mentioning the term blackout, which means when a gang orders the hit of somebody they're mad at and the entire family. So
right.
I don't know, maybe that's what a blackout is supposed to look like. And
maybe
that's what he was. That's what he was
trying to make it look like. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say that on the First 48, it's one of my favorite shows, but this is how you know the person did it, is if they bleep out their face or not. And in the first 5 minutes, they interviewed this guy and he was not bleeped out. We were like, he did it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
He's the one who did it. Yeah. So he went into the police station and gave this bullshit ass story to the cops. Let me tell you about it. On March 5th, 2 days after he had undergone surgery, the police visited the 9-year-old CJ, that's the boy who had the knife in his head, in the hospital to see if there were anything that he could recall from that night. They found him in and out of consciousness. He was cursing. He was talking crazy, screaming out names, including Cassandra and Roderick. At some point, officers decided to send Pat Lewis of the Child Advocacy Center to the hospital with Lieutenant Mason to talk to CJ.
The Black female homicide detective, Sergeant Caroline Mason, said his eyes were swollen shut. She asked him if he could recall what happened, and she said he started to tear up, and he said they knocked on the door and his mama let them in. Then he said the grown-ups stood in a circle in the living room fighting and arguing. She said after that, the little boy who homicide detectives described as a diamond to the investigation began to hyperventilate and would not say another word. So they backed off and waited for tips to roll in.
They put out a $30,000 reward to anyone that had any information that led to an arrest. Police pursued gang leads, specifically the Gangster Disciples, as it had been suggested that they may have ordered a blackout, as I mentioned before, a hit to kill an entire family. During the investigation, the entire Dotson family was put into protective custody, including Jessie.
Yeah.
Members of the Gangster Disciples reportedly became angry when they learned that the gang had been implicated in the murders of women and children.
When the family was put into protective custody, Junior held a gun to his head and threatened suicide. He stated that he did not want to return to jail, that they were trying to pin the offenses on him, and that he was not going to jail for something he did not do. I guess he thought that the officers were coming for him instead of coming to put them in protective custody. But officers told him that they were not there to arrest him, but they were placing the family in protective custody. And then I guess he stopped.
This guy's a real piece of work.
Yeah.
Okay. On March 7th, 2008, officers received a telephone call from a nurse at the hospital informing them that CJ was awake and rational and that the police needed to come talk to him. Eventually, CJ recovered a little bit and he told police his uncle Junior, Jessie Denton, was responsible.
And on March 8th, 2008, Jessie Dotson Jr. confessed after CJ identified him, Uncle Junior, as the lone attacker. He said he shot his brother, he shot the women, and then he stabbed the kids. He started to tell Lieutenant Armstrong this, and then the lieutenant let him talk to his mom.
He told his mother everything. He told her his brother grabbed a shotgun, then set it down, and that's when he just started shooting at everybody in the room. She said, what happened to the babies? And she's holding his hand, and he's holding hers, and he's got his head down on the interrogation room table. She said, what happened to the babies? And he said, they got stabbed. And she asked him why, and he mumbled, it was because they saw it.
The lieutenant was baffled that someone could have so much rage to do that to adults, let alone kids.
Same. I'm baffled too.
Me too. Junior's mom held him and told him she loved him. She lost 2 sons, one to murder and the other to prison, and several grandchildren. And still, she held him and she told him she loved him.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. The love of a mother. And I just feel really bad for the entire family. I mean, the ripple effects of this loss are extreme. After the murder, the community built a memorial for the family. It was full of teddy bears. Even people who didn't even know the family stopped by to give their condolences and drop off cards and teddy bears at the site. And the police, when they announced that they apprehended Dotson, usually cops are like excited when they catch a perp, but and when they get to announce it. But the looks on all of their faces during that press conference was just complete sadness that they even had to be there.
Yeah, and that memorial at the end of the last 48 episode, there's a lady there, and she didn't even know the family, and she was crying. I teared up.
I teared up too. I mean, even talking about the case, it's a tough one. We're trying to have fun, but this is a tough one.
But this one is a tough one. Yeah, it's hard to joke around.
Yeah. Sorry if you were looking for huge laughs. We're doing our best.
We're trying
to tell the story and enjoy ourselves. So let's get into it. Is a tough one. Let's get into the arrest.
All right. Yay.
Yay. Justice.
Dotson was arrested on March 28th, 2008, when he confessed to the crimes in the police station. Jesse was charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder. He did not plead guilty. He went to trial.
Son of a bitch. Did he not think that they were going to convict him?
Yep, that's what he thought.
Let's see. The cross-examination by the DA was fucking fire. When I say give this guy because oh man, we'll link it up to the show because it was good. I don't usually compliment DAs. Usually they are trash, but this time the DA got it right and they put on a great case. Jesse testified that he heard shots fired in the house and he jumped under the bed to save himself. He knew his family was in the house. He knew they were dead. And a 2-month-old baby, a 2-year-old child, a 4-year-old child, a 5-year-old child, and a 9-year-old child were in the house. But he never called his family. The DA was like, "You never called your mama. You never called the police." And he was like, "No, sir. I feared for my life." And then the prosecution blew up photos that police took of the home showing just how close a fucking phone was to these dead bodies. And he said that he saw the phone, he just didn't bother to pick it up, and that he left the house Saturday night and went home and went to bed like nothing happened. Yikes. And he went to work on Monday, the day the bodies were discovered.
In his testimony, Jessie Dotson claimed gang members were responsible for the attack and that he was innocent. He claimed that he was threatened when he was interviewed, and that's why he confessed. But CJ told jurors in his testimony that Uncle Junior attacked him and that he tried to fight off his uncle before ending up in the bathtub with a kitchen knife embedded in his head.
Shout out to that little boy for being brave enough to face his uncle and testify in court.
Yeah.
Authorities said that after a day of drinking, Jessie Dotson shot and killed his brother, Cecil Dotson, in the early morning hours of March 2nd, 2008. I was wondering if there were substances involved in this. Sounds like there were.
Yeah.
He then went after everyone else in the house with 2 guns, boards, and several knives to eliminate witnesses. Then Junior fled from the house by riding off on a child's bicycle.
Yeah, that's the only funny part in this whole story.
He took the bike and rode off into the sunset like a true badass. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Whew, my spirit needed it.
On October 11th, 2010, Jessie Dotson Jr. Let me start again.
Oh, man. Okay.
On October 11th, 2010, Jessie Dotson Jr. was convicted on all counts. The jury took 90 minutes to convict.
Sorry.
No, that's good. And on October 12th, 2010, the 9-women, 3-man jury chosen in Nashville and sequestered in Memphis deliberated less than 2 hours before agreeing on the sentences. Defense attorneys had asked for life in prison without parole. Dotson instead received 6 death penalties, and on November 8th, 2010, Dotson received an additional 120 years in prison.
Hey, our justice system doesn't always get it right, but when they do,
They do.
they really do.
Today, the beverage aisle looks a lot different than it used to. America's beverage companies are working together. We're delivering the options everyone wants. In fact, nearly 60% of beverages Americans buy have zero sugar. You'll find more variety than ever, including more of your favorites, now available with zero sugar. You'll also find more sizes and clear calorie information on the front of every can, bottle, and pack. We know when it comes to finding balance, the more choices, the better.
Have you ever wondered about things that go bump in the night, or objects in the sky, or other things you just couldn't explain? Then join me, Jim Mallard, on my podcast, The Mallard Report. Each week, you'll find engaging conversations with guests who are authors, historians, and scholars who lend their expertise as we discuss current events and venture into the fringe and paranormal. The Mallard Report hits controversies head-on, yet remains conversational, and can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any other major podcast platform.
So, where are they now? In 2013, Dotson's conviction was upheld on appeal. As far as we can tell, he is still in prison awaiting the death penalty. An April 2017 article mentioned that he was still serving his time.
Ida Anderson, CJ, Cedric, and Sanaya's maternal grandmother took custody of the surviving children after the attack. In an interview at the time, Ida Anderson said, "We are in counseling. It's hard. We're making adjustments. It's hard, but we'll get through it. With God's help, we will get through."
There's probably a lot of church music
involved,
playing in their house. Yeah. Amen. Anyway, thank goodness Cecil is alive and well. That's CJ. I heard him on a radio interview, and he remembers everything from when he was 9 years old. And gave a really detailed interview. And he looks all right. He sounds all right. He's an adult now. And so that's a happier part of the story, that he's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And Cedric Dotson is also still alive. He's in high school.
Oh.
In an interview last year when he was still in middle school, he said that he plays basketball for his school, and he wanted to keep playing basketball in high school.
That's awesome. The littlest victim, Sanaya Dotson, was only 2 months old at the time of the crime. She's now 10. She does not remember the events, but does know about what happened. She practices ballet. She loves to garden and aspires to be a designer when she grows up, which is
and she's cute as a button too.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So that makes me smile. That's good.
Yeah. On a sadder note, Erica Smith, the mother of Cecil II, the baby who was killed in the attack, she was in a motor vehicle accident the same year in November of 2008.
Oh, wow.
And her neck was broken. And I couldn't find out how she's doing today. I did a bunch of Googling, and that was the only article I could find was about the car accident. So if you guys know anything about her, please let us know. I hope she's okay.
Yeah.
Because this is just too much tragedy for one family.
Oh my gosh, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping somebody gives us an update.
Yeah.
Detective Sergeant Caroline Mason of the Memphis Police Department has since been promoted to major. So that's pretty good news too.
Pretty cool. And I Googled her. In our story, she was a sergeant.
Yeah.
It was mentioned somewhere that she'd been promoted to lieutenant. And I was like, oh, she's a lieutenant now. So I wanted to get more information about that. And then I found out she'd been promoted to a major.
Cool.
And then I found a whole thread, people talking about how much they love her.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Did you see that too?
No, I didn't, but I just know I have the same feeling. She's my favorite lady police officer.
Yeah, they just love her.
Yeah, she's great. I want her. I want to meet her. maybe if we ever make it to CrimeCon, she'll be there and we can say hello.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So now we're going to get into what we believe made Mr. Dotson snap. I'll start. First off, I think when he got out of prison, he was never rehabilitated when he was in there. His anger just grew. He also didn't have a good relationship with his brother because he believed his brother snitched on him, which led to his 18-year sentence before. Dotson was poor, Black, and when jobs or universities or sports teams don't have their doors open, guess what? Gangs do. And that's, I believe, what led to his downfall. Now, some gang members in high places are able to get good lawyers, and then they don't have to, serve long prison sentences or whatever. But when you are affiliated with a gang and you get locked up, you have to remain affiliated to stay alive. Another thing I wanted to point out was it seemed like even though Dotson was a piece of shit, his mom still showed love for him all the way to the end, even up to his confession. So I just think shout out to that mother.
Yeah. So I don't know much about gangs, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I do know that kids who don't have much in the way of family or who are poor will turn to them as another family or as a way to make money selling drugs or something like that. I couldn't find out a whole lot about this guy's early home life before he was a teenager. Mm-hmm. But like you said, it seemed like he had a loving mother. And his father later let him work with him in his painting job. Mm-hmm. So he was around at least. Mm-hmm. But judging from how he behaved as a teenager, it seemed like he was a little shit. Yeah. Very difficult to control, actually totally out of control.
There you go.
And I didn't see mention anywhere that his siblings were like that. Mm-hmm. It's hard to tell if it had anything to do with his home life, or if he was just a bad kid. But if I were to guess, I would say he was a bad kid.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes that happens.
Yeah, and I can't help but think of my brother, who he was not as bad as Junior Dotson. Mm-hmm. He didn't kill us, but
oh, thank goodness! Then where would we be?
But he got into a lot of trouble as a teenager and made my parents' life hell.
Really?
And he had a perfectly normal home life with loving parents. Mm-hmm. Of course, our family wasn't perfect, but it wasn't anywhere near bad. Mm-hmm. And my sister and I turned out okay. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Sometimes kids are just bad. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, it seemed like he resented the fact that his family didn't visit him enough or didn't do enough for him during the time that he was in jail. And this I also find suspect.
What?
The fact that he didn't feel that they did enough for him. Some people like this, again, thinking about my brother, you can never do enough for them. Everything is always somebody else's fault. Mm-hmm. And they're pissed because maybe they didn't come every day to visit him, or they didn't come every weekend to visit him. Mm-hmm. And, maybe it was hard for them to do that. They had to work or whatever, But in any case, he was pissed about it, and he harbored a lot of bitterness towards them. And I think he was just pissed off at his family, and specifically his brother. Mm-hmm. And he just got angry one night over something really stupid, and he lost it. Yeah. And since he's a horrible person, once he'd killed his brother, he killed everyone else just because he didn't want to go back to jail. It's like the definition of like selfishness, like super duper selfishness.
Yeah, but it's insane to think that you killed one person, and if you kill everybody else too, you're not going to have to go to jail at some point.
That's just stupid.
Exactly. So now we're going to get into our takeaways, what we thought of this case. This is one of the saddest true crime cases I have ever come across in my entire black ass life. So many people were hurt, innocent people, babies. How can you kill an infant or your nephew after he told you that he loved you? And then hearing the prosecutor describe how the kids were beaten and sliced, and that Dotson, he testified that he never heard any babies screaming or crying. That was gut-wrenching to watch because he knew it was a lie. But even just telling the facts about the story is really hard. I think there are a lot of things to blame for this whole incident and the moment of these crimes taking place. I think it's fair to discuss after this episode prison reform, gun reform, criminal justice reform, poverty, education. All of those systems failed this entire family. I think it's very ironic that salmonella was found harmful to people and it was removed from the shelves immediately. But these problems that I just listed off remain unsolved. So it just seems so silly to me. I'm glad some of the babies survived and that they're thriving today, it sounds like. But one thing I wanted to point out was the bars on the windows, and that there was only one way in and out of the house. And the victims, the kids, they did not stand a chance. They couldn't have gotten out if they tried. I feel bad for the entire family and the entire community. Also, shout out to the detectives for investigating the shit out of this case relentlessly, even though they all said that, they'd never seen anything like this. Many of the officers couldn't sleep. I don't normally have very nice things to say about cops because I think they're messy hoes. But these guys did a great job. So thank you, Memphis Police Department.
Hip hop air horn.
Yes, hip hop air horn for y'all. Okay.
This is a really, really sad story. It makes my heart hurt thinking about all those babies. Yeah. They were just babies.
Yeah, they really were.
Yeah. And there's actually a lot of information about the crime that I found in court records, just a ton. Mm-hmm. We'll link those so you can read all the details if you want to. There's more than what we talked about here. There was so much that I had to cut it down. Mm-hmm. So like if you want to read all the nasty details, they're there. Mm-hmm. But even though there was all this information about the crimes, mm-hmm. there was very little information about the people involved. Mm. Jessie Dotson Jr. doesn't have a wiki page.
What?
And I can't even figure out if he's been executed or not. I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
But there's nowhere that says...
Where's the info?
Where's the info? Well. And I know very little about the victims or Dotson's early life. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't heard about this case before Marcus suggested it. Mm-hmm. I've heard all kinds of stuff about Chris Watts and the Watts family's homicide. The guy who killed his kids and his pregnant wife.
Oh,
but he's white.
The white guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Watts family homicide has a wiki page. So
already?
All up on that. Oh, yeah.
Already? Wow.
And the Leicester Street murders does not.
Wow. That's pretty telling.
Yep.
to talk about sad stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So if you love true crime and you don't want to die, here's a tip for you.
So this segment is not intended to be victim blaming. We thought of this segment because I read somewhere that a lot of people listen to true crime because they want to know what they can do to be safer. But in my mind, this is not meant to blame the victims. It's just learning from other people's mistakes. Sometimes we have no suggestions for a particular episode, and we will just offer up generic tips.
So, one thing I wanted to talk about for tips on how to not get murdered is gangs. Gangs are deadly. And some people might not understand gangs. I think much of white America thinks that kids join gangs because they're fun. Really, there's just nowhere else for these kids to go. If a gang like jumps you in, that's when they beat you up to initiate you or make you commit a crime or, kill or beat somebody up to initiate you. What are you going to do? You can't just be like, no, thank you. So before it gets to that point, I think communities should try to make gangs obsolete. There are ways to get out of gangs, even though it's really hard. There's resources. You can help your family members get out. One of the most famous gang rehabilitation programs is Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles. It's run by a priest. I think some people might think, well, why don't they just move? Poor people can't just move. So again, I am still looking for more companies or more organizations like Homeboy Industries, and if I find them, I'll link them to the show or I'll post them up on our social media pages. But there is help out there to get out of gangs. Let's see. It is hard to get out, but it comes at great cost to some. So the easiest thing is not to get in, which is so much easier said than done. But if you want to help, maybe you can mentor a kid, maybe you can coach a kid's team, or have your home be a safe space for kids to go and have cookies and do homework after school. That's a good start. Youth groups, sports teams, employment opportunities for kids in your community. The key is to keep them away and have a better prize at the end of the tunnel for them. Because for the kids that join gangs, there is no better option in front of them. And I mean, if you're walking to school every day and you see the dope boy with tons of money in his pocket, gorgeous cars, gorgeous women, and we out here hungry, man, I'm not going to school.
Yeah, so, it's really, really tempting. Yeah. Like I said, I don't know a lot about gangs, but I do know that kids who are busy with activities don't have as much time to get into trouble, idle hands and all that.
Yeah.
It's hard, though, because when they're busy, it means you're busy. And when you're poor, sometimes all you have time for is work.
Right.
Sometimes you have more than one job and you're just trying to hold it together. You can't afford to put the kids in dance classes or music lessons or whatever else. And you don't always have the time for it either. And, even when my grandson was living with me, we signed him up for T-ball. The practice times and places were often not very convenient for working people. It's like they expected that there were two parents and at least one of them didn't work. Like the practices would be like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't get out of work until 4:30. I don't get home until like 5:30, So it's just ridiculous.
It is kind of a vicious cycle.
Yeah. And we talk about family in this country and how important family is. All the time we talk about it. But our society isn't really all that family friendly. And sometimes I feel like it's all about the Benjamins. It's all that they care about is money.
Oh yeah. No, feel the same way. One thing I wanted to add is, so like we live in a poor part of town, but we're lucky. So like when my kids have things, like we sign them up for sports at the community center because it's cheaper, but we'll also buy extra memberships for other kids who can't afford it.
Oh, nice.
Or like when there's field trips at my kids' school, It's a charter school, so there's a fee for field trips. So we'll pay for more kids to be able to go.
Oh, that is really nice.
So I'm not going to be out here coaching anybody's team, but I am happy to help by maybe making it more possible or more feasible for another family. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Something to try to help all of our communities. Because if Uncle Sam's not going to help us out, we have to help each other out.
Got to help each other. Yeah.
So, do we have any extra read all about it crime news?
I do. And this is another story that was brought to my attention by someone in our Facebook group. So shout out to Rondika for posting about this.
Thank you, Rondika.
So, Hania Aguilar, a 13-year-old and 8th grader from Lumberton, North Carolina, was abducted outside of her home on November 5th. Mm-hmm. She went outside before school to warm up the family's SUV when a man dressed in black with a yellow bandana forced her into the SUV and then drove off. The SUV was found several miles south of her home. And unfortunately, Hania's body was found November 27th in a body of water in Robeson County, about 10 miles south of the mobile home park where she was kidnapped.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Authorities wouldn't elaborate on whether the body had been concealed, but they said it was not visible from the road or obvious to people passing by. Yeah. Investigators spent Wednesday combing the area in daylight after finding the body the previous night. The cause of death hasn't been released pending an autopsy. Investigators would not describe the condition of the body, and an FBI official said he did not have any information as to whether Hania was killed where she was or found elsewhere.
Very sad story. You know, this is an interesting story in how it was reported, because this is a young girl of color, and I heard about it on the evening news, like the national news. Lester Holt told the story, which is interesting. My husband and I talk about this all the time, about Lester Holt, because he's the guy at the helm. We hear more stories about people of color on the NBC nightly news, and I think Lester Holt has a lot to do with that. So I this is a devastating story. I feel terrible for this family, but it was one that was on our radar because we heard about it on the national news. So
at least she got some national news. I hadn't heard of it.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
but I don't watch the news on TV.
Excuse me?
I don't.
Any reason? Care to share?
I don't like network TV. I will get my news usually from the internet. Or NPR.
Yes.
Or BBC.
I get my news from The Daily Show.
The Daily Show too, yeah.
I'm just kidding. I get news other places too. But by the time I watch The Daily Show, like, I've already heard everything on the internet, on NPR, on podcasts, and The Daily Show is just a nice, funny way to seal it all up.
Round it out.
I'm already informed. I just want to laugh. So
yeah. Well, wait, don't tell me is also good for that.
That is
too.
A good way to laugh at the news. I like that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So moving along, my news piece is about a Thanksgiving Day disagreement that led to a father shooting his son about the Kaepernick kneeling during the anthem. Yes. So we have Christmas and New Year's coming up, Hanukkah's coming up, and I don't want anybody else getting shot over the dinner table. No more families divided. But here's the story. Two of Jorge Luis Valencia La Madrid's sons were having a debate centered around former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick's game-changing decision to kneel during the national anthem during a 2016 preseason game. The silent protest against racial injustice has sparked national discourse and inspired players of various sports to join in solidarity. La Madrid was unable to separate his sons from fighting, so he went and got his shotgun after asking his 21-year-old son Esteban Marley Valencia to leave. He did before, but quickly returned, and he was throwing around patio furniture. After hitting his father in the face with a water bottle, the 51-year-old, who was still holding his weapon, squeezed the trigger of the pistol and shot his son. He was charged. He was charged with aggravated assault using a deadly weapon. The young man suffered non-life-threatening injuries and was treated at a nearby hospital. So
the guy hit his father in the face with a water bottle, and the father was holding a gun at the time. And did he accidentally squeeze the trigger?
I don't think it was accident, because he got the gun when they started fighting and he couldn't break them up. And he was like, hey, you need to get the heck out of here. By the way, the son he shot has like a drinking problem and has had multiple DUIs last year. So he was like, you need to get the heck out of here. I got this gun. And then his son was like, okay, I'm leaving. But then he came back and he was throwing around furniture. And then he was essentially taunting his dad. And I mean, what if it was one of those metal water bottles from Costco? That's a weapon.
Yeah, that's even a plastic water bottle. If it's got a bunch of water in it, it would be pretty painful.
Yes,
water's
indeed.
heavy.
Water is heavy. So yeah, he pulled the trigger. So not in my house.
So that was a fun Thanksgiving.
That was a fun-filled Thanksgiving. Pass the potatoes, please.
Saturday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Saturday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Saturday. Saturday, bring it on.
So now we're going to get into the show where we shout out any content by people of color, about people of color, any marginalized groups, or any true crime goodies. So I wanted to share with you all Code Switch. It's a podcast about race, and it's super interesting. And the latest episode is about race and dogs. Now, I've mentioned before on this show that some people believe dogs are capable of racism, and Code Switch confirms it. Some dogs are afraid of people with darker skin. And the show is hosted by Gene Demby, a black guy. In my head, we're friends. And Shireen Marisol Meraji. She's a half Latinx and half Iranian American woman. We also talked about like dog breeds and race. And Beth, you and I both own pit bulls, which turns out used to be an American staple. That was the golden retriever for a family. For a family before those asshole golden retrievers took that title. Basically, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, before segregation and redlining, where they draw actual red lines on maps so black people can't live there, white people all had pit bulls. They were family dogs. Yeah. But once people moved to the suburbs, and by people, I mean white people, the picture of an American changed, and so did the family dog. But pit bulls were still around in the inner cities for poor Black and brown families as family pets and for protection. So it's a really good episode about dogs and racism. So check it out.
That does sound good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my shout out, I just wanted to mention that I started watching a show on Showtime called Escape at Dannemora. Have you heard of that?
No.
I added the Showtime app to my Fire Stick using the 7-day free trial so I could watch the first episode because I'd heard about it. And I was like, I'm going to check it out and see if it's any good. It's good. So,
okay.
Yeah. So now I have to watch all of them. So I kept the app.
Might as well.
It's somewhat, Yeah, it's a little cheaper than a lot of the like pay channels you can get that way.
Oh,
And to be honest, I do like to reward networks that have good programming. So
yes.
so I'll keep it until I finish the show
Okay.
because they're releasing one episode a week.
Oh,
But all that said, you could always wait until all the episodes have aired and then order the 7-day trial and totally
and
binge
it.
it. Yeah, that probably would have been the smarter way to do it. But I was like, I heard about it and I was dying to watch it. So,
Oh, plus there's so many good shows on Showtime.
yeah, I mean, it won't get wasted. So, anyway, it's about the escape from the Clinton Correctional Facility in upstate New York that happened in 2015.
I remember this.
Yeah, 2 prisoners escaped with the help of a married female employee at the prison. And the story is mostly about a bunch of white people, full disclosure. But Benicio del Toro is in it.
Yes. Hey. How are you,
So-
Benicio? But that's a really fascinating story. Like, do you remember on the news? Like they did like a smiley face. Like where they exited, they drew a giant smiley face and like a "fu pigs" in spray paint or something. Like they were very brazen. In escape, which just made it so cool.
Yeah, and then the whole story with the female employee. Apparently, they were both sexually involved with this lady.
Yes.
So, and Patricia Arquette plays her in the TV show, and she's excellent.
She's excellent all around in general. Anyway, awesome. Well, I just might have to get my 7-day free Showtime trial.
Yeah.
Well, it has been so fun, Beth, talking about this Leicester Street case. Where can
so fun.
Where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com. Our Facebook page is Fruitloops Pod, and our discussion group is Fruitloops Pod Discussion on Facebook. We are also on Twitter and Instagram at Fruitloops Pod, and links to our sources will be in our footnotes. If you want to support the show, you can send us a donation on the Cash App, which you can download to your phone, or you can find online at cash.me/$ Fruitloops Pod. Or you can become a monthly patron through our Podbean patron page. And this will help us pay for things like our website and pod hostings. There's no minimum and no commitment. Even $1 would help.
Yes, it would. This is a weekly podcast and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, guys. It's crazy out there. Well, that's it. That's the episode, and we thank you for listening. Thanks for sticking with us. Rest in peace to the victims. We pray for peace, healing, love, and light to everyone affected by this case, and especially to those surviving children who, at the time where Cecil Jr. was 9, Cedric Dotson was 5, and Sonaya Dotson was 2 months old. Now they're, older and thriving, and that is wonderful news, and we just want to hope that the survivors continue to thrive. I found a couple of updates on the kids. CJ, who was the 9-year-old who bravely testified against his uncle in the trial, had some thoughts in a recent interview saying they should have killed this man. He doesn't need to be free at all. I feel like he should get the same treatment done as what he did to my people. And the children who survived, and were ended up being raised by their grandmother, and everybody had to overcome so much. And so their story is remarkable. It is tragic. It's horrific. There was also a moment in the episode where we talked about some shout outs, but I think the shout outs that we mentioned in the episode are still legit good picks. Mwah, chef's kiss, Code Switch on NPR, which is a show about race and how it plays a part in everyday lives, and Escape to Dannemora. And anyway, check those out. Escape to Dannemora was on Max, and Code Switch on NPR is wherever you find your podcasts. Big thanks from me and Beth and Minnie over at Fruitloops HQ. That's going to do it for this week's episode. We will see you soon. Until then, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts and on the internet and stuff. And look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there.
We are gathered here today to give you permission to plan the wedding that you want.
I'm Jessica Bishop.
And I'm Sari Wienerman.
And we're the hosts of the Bouquet Toss podcast.
Today's couples have to juggle so many things, from family expectations to outdated traditions and what's currently trending.
So to make it easier, we're going deep to figure out why we do weddings the way that we do, so you can decide what to keep and what to toss from your wedding day plans.
You are cordially invited to subscribe to the Bouquet Toss wherever you get your podcasts or at evergreenpodcast.com.
By the power vested in us, we pronounce you free to plan your day your way.
Do you enjoy science, spooky stories, and all things paranormal? We do too.
While we would love for most paranormal stories to be true, we are here to tell you that they probably aren't. But that doesn't make them any less fun to speculate about.
We are the Spooky Science Sisters podcast. In this podcast, we bring you bi-weekly discussions on possible scientific explanations behind the supernatural. Backed up by research articles and other credible sources, we do deep dives into things like archaeology and physics, and share in-depth discussions with topic experts.
Visit us at SpookyScienceSisters.com to listen to a couple of skeptics debunk some of your favorite alien encounters, cryptid sightings, and ghost stories with science, sass, and a significant amount of laughter.
Thank you, and stay spooky.